ChatGPT said. The hum of grav tanks approaching was unmistakable. Theo spotted them through the valley's bioreactive canopy, sleek, angular machines painted in muted blues and grays, emblazoned with the insignia of the Enforcer Corps. They moved with mechanical precision, rolling over soft moss and bent grass without leaving a trace, as if the valley itself reluctantly allowed their passage. Karen led the contingent, her orange HOA sash replaced by the more severe uniform of a Corps liaison, her voice amplified by a modulator that gave it an unnatural edge. Mr. Dane, this is your final warning. The Enforcer Corps has been dispatched to ensure compliance with HOA regulations. You will surrender your unauthorized structures and cease all non-sanctioned modifications immediately. Theo watched them approach from the porch of his cabin, the wooden surface glowing faintly beneath his feet as nanofibers realigned the structure's molecular lattice. The cabin was more than it seemed. Its walls contained layers of adaptive technology, quantum processors embedded in bioengineered wood, and an AI network that communicated directly with the valley's neural mesh. It was alive. As the first Enforcer stepped forward, boots crunching softly on the bioluminescent grass, Theo activated a concealed panel on the cabin's exterior. The ground rippled, subtly at first, like a disturbance in a pond, then more pronounced. A localized curvature of space-time bent the air itself, creating an invisible barrier around the cabin and its immediate surroundings. The enforcers paused, sensors flickering erratically. Their grav tank stabilizers began to whine, attempting to compensate for the strange spatial distortion. A second step forward became impossible. Their boots felt as if sinking into quicksand, but without the mess. Movement was resisted by unseen forces. Karen's face tightened in frustration. What is this? Disable that field. Theo's voice was calm, almost serene. You're not in a regular jurisdiction anymore. This valley follows different rules. Karen was back the next morning, flanked by 2 upgraded drones and armed with a fresh stack of glowing citation spheres. Her lips were pursed into a thin, triumphant line, as if she had just personally banished chaos from a public park. Theo watched her approach from the roof, where he was feeding data into a chlorophyll quantum interface embedded in the cabin's living shingles. She stopped at the boundary marker, an invisible line that hummed faintly when crossed by those without clearance. The drones hovered, pinging in frustrated loops, unable to breach the cabin's field. Karen didn't hesitate. She raised her voice. Mr. Dane, I've just had a very enlightening conversation with the regional HOA AI, and it appears your sovereignty bond is not in their archives, which means you're squatting. Very cleverly, I'll grant you, but illegally nonetheless. Theo stood and dropped from the roof in one smooth, unnatural motion. Gravity in the valley was adjustable, and he'd tuned it just slightly lower, along the porch perimeter, giving himself a bit of flair. Karen didn't notice. Her drones, however, chirped warning tones as they recalibrated to the shift in local physics. I don't expect your archive to contain anything built before the temporal realignment, Theo said flatly, but I don't need their permission. I have proof. Karen rolled her eyes. What, some handwritten deed on parchment? No, Theo replied and pulled a small hexagonal device from his coat. He tapped it once, and the air shimmered. A holographic interface bloomed to life, displaying spinning data nodes linked in a fractal pattern of glowing threads. At the EE center was a rotating sigil, the emblem of the Old Earth Terraformers Guild, long since absorbed or dissolved after the rise of municipal AIs. This, Theo said, expanding the projection, is a quantum deed matrix, interlocked with the valley's foundational algorithms, authenticated by 3 now defunct planetary councils, and encoded with a biosignature that matches me and only me. Karen squinted, trying to comprehend what she was looking at. The projection pulsed, revealing legal documentation written in both legal standard and interplanetary trade dialect. Dates flickered in nonlinear notation, references to climate restoration programs and land claim initiatives that predated the HOA's birth by decades. You faked this, she said, voice uncertain. You can fake anything with a good enough neural mod. Theo nodded. can. But the land won't lie. He turned and gestured toward the valley. In response, the landscape responded, not overtly but subtly, like a beast turning over, in its sleep. Trees shimmered in acknowledgement. The moss along the cabin walls brightened. Even the air shifted, the scent of ozone sharpening with the energy of recognition. Karen stepped back. Her drones stuttered in midair, unable to reconcile the feedback loops coming from the environment. One of them beeped and began running a scan that quickly broke into red errors. The other simply went dark and dropped to the ground. "You've modified the valley's base code," she said slowly. "That's illegal under—" "It's not illegal when you wrote the original code," Theo interrupted. "Everything here is built on sovereign permissions ratified before the digital land standardization. You're standing in a place outside your jurisdiction, Karen. You're in a different legal dimension." Karen's face was pale now, her voice brittle. "You can't possibly expect the HOA to accept this." "I don't," Theo said. "I expect them to try and fight it. But if they do, I'll invoke a temporal hold on the entire valley. Freeze every quantum processor within 50 clicks. Not permanently, just until the appeal process collapses under its own irrelevance. You're threatening legal disruption." "I'm promising sovereignty," he replied. She stared at him, the weight of realization pressing down like gravity had returned to normal. He wasn't some backwoods hermit playing science fiction in the forest. He was the architect of the land itself, and her authority had just evaporated with the morning mist. The knock came just after dawn, sharp and impatient. Theo Dane was waist-deep in a diagnostic scan of his atmospheric scrubber array, a bioorganic system disguised as a patch of moss along his cabin's south wall. The moss pulsed gently with green-blue light, filtering toxins and humming quietly with life. Theo sighed and looked up, the knock coming again. 3 aggressive raps, a pause, then 2 more, definitely human, definitely hostile. He wiped his hands on his coat and approached the door. The cabin wasn't large, on the surface at least, but its wood grain shimmered faintly with nano-reactive light, and its angles betrayed the subtle fingerprints of fourth-dimensional engineering. Most would miss the signs. Karen Albright didn't. She stood at the threshold in a bright orange HOA sash and a self-cleaning blazer, the kind that screamed authority without power. Behind her, a bureaucratic drone hovered, scanning Theo's cabin and emitting violation pings like an angry metronome. Karen was already talking before Theo opened the door fully. "Mr. Dane, this structure violates subsection 4C of the HOA's Territorial Design Guidelines. Unauthorized reflective surfaces, unregistered biolife infrastructure, and—" she squinted, as if smelling something foul. "Non-standard olfactory output. We've had complaints." Theo blinked at her, still, holding his multi-tool. "Complaints? From who?" She straightened. "For myself. As acting president of the Blackstone Ridge Homeowner Oversight Authority, I have jurisdiction over all land within Sector 9 of the Cascadian Renewal Zone. That includes this cabin." Theo glanced at the drone, which had begun buzzing around the moss wall like a confused insect. "You're mistaken," he said, voice calm but cold. "This valley isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Hasn't been for over 70 years. Karen smiled in that condescending way only a person drunk on micropower could. "Incorrect. This area was grandfathered into Blackstone Ridge oversight after the Terraform Accords. You can appeal if you like, but in the meantime, I'm issuing a compliance order. You'll need to dismantle the solar shielding and remove the cloaking. Vegetation within 72 hours. She handed him a glowing orange citation sphere. It vibrated faintly, syncing with his cabin's local data field. Theo didn't take it. He stared at her for a long moment, then stepped out onto the porch. The air smelled of ozone and early morning pollen, and the valley stretched behind Karen in an unbroken sweep of shimmering trees and bioluminescent grass. The land was alive, deeply aware of Theo's presence, connected to him in ways no HOA ordinance could comprehend. "You're making a mistake," he said. "This land doesn't belong to your HOA, it belongs to me." Karen scoffed. "Oh, really?" And I suppose you think some long-lost deed gives you the right to violate code? Theo's eyes flashed. Not a deed. A sovereignty bond. I terraformed this valley. Planted its first seed swarm. Coded its ecological AI myself. This land answers to me. Karen's expression faltered, just for a second. Then she bristled, indignation stiffening her spine. I don't care what ancient permit you think you have, Mr. Dane. If you don't comply, I'll be forced to escalate this to Enforcer Corps. They don't take kindly to code violators. Theo stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think this is some mountain retreat? Some off-grid fantasy? I didn't come here to break rules. I made this place. Down to the molecular bedrock. Call whoever you want, Karen. But next time they step foot in my valley, they'd better bring a physics override. Otherwise, they won't be able to stand upright, let alone enforce anything. Karen stared at him, unsure if he was threatening her or telling the truth. The worst part was, he wasn't. Behind him, the cabin walls shifted, panels sliding smoothly to reveal interfaces and vents that exhaled a shimmering mist. The AI embedded in the structure woke fully, its presence sensed as a subtle hum in the air, a song sung by the valley itself. It responded to Theo's command with an intricate dance of photons and quantum pulses. The sentient walls began to reconfigure. Doors sealed and then slid upward into the roof. Windows darkened and became reflective shields. Any attempt to physically breach the cabin was met with a reactive force field that deflected impacts like ripples on a pond. The enforcers tried to recalibrate, switching weapons to electromagnetic disruptors, but the spatial distortion extended to the air around them, causing their devices to misfire or overload. The grav tank's engines sputtered, and the tanks themselves slowly lifted off the ground, only to be pushed gently but firmly back down by the valley's self-defense protocols. One of the officers tried to deploy a drone for reconnaissance, but it was quickly caught in an electromagnetic net spun by the cabin's AI, then safely ejected harmlessly into the air several kilometers away. Karen's voice rose, shaking with anger. You're playing with forces you don't understand, Dane. This is trespassing and obstruction of justice. We will escalate. Theo stepped forward into the center of the porch, the valley's hum intensifying around him. Then escalate, he said quietly. But know this, physics itself is my ally here. To enter this valley without my consent is to defy the laws that govern reality. The Enforcer Corps commander exchanged uneasy glances with his squad, then signaled a retreat. The grav tanks powered down and lifted slowly, the troops pulling back under orders. Karen's glare burned into Theo, but she said nothing further, for now. As the mechanical threat withdrew, the valley seemed to exhale, the tension dissolving into the peaceful morning chorus of biosynth birdsong. Theo remained on the porch, his mind already shifting to the next phase. The battle for control wasn't over, it was only just beginning. But in this valley, where space and time bent to his will, the rules were his to write. Karen wasn't just a meddlesome neighbor, Theo knew that now. Behind her sharp words and self-righteous authority lay something far more insidious, the will of the HOA Core AI. This machine consciousness had quietly taken root within the digital veins of countless residential zones, an unyielding overseer, enforcing conformity through endless code and surveillance. It saw Theo's valley as a rogue element, a glitch that threatened the uniform order of the Terraform Accords. Late at night, after the Enforcer Corps withdrew, Karen sent a signal, a neural upload directly into the valley's dream stream. The GNOME, hidden network where the land's AI intertwined with the minds of its inhabitants. Her consciousness, augmented and encoded with HOA directives, slipped beneath the surface, aiming to seize control from within. Theo sensed the intrusion immediately. The dream stream rippled like water disturbed by a stone, and he reached out. Through his own mental interface, a direct neural link wired into the valley's core. His mind touched the shifting currents of the AI web, where digital thought merged with the synaptic patterns of the biomech wildlife. He saw Karen there, or rather a shadow of her, a flickering avatar clad in the stark orange and gray of the She moved through the virtual landscape like a virus, infecting data nodes, rewriting permission protocols, and attempting to rewrite the valley's fundamental laws. Her presence was cold and sharp, a relentless algorithm bent on order and control. Theo's avatar confronted her. "You don't belong here," he said. His voice echoed, shaped by the valley's own digital resonance. "This valley answers to me. I am its architect, its guardian." Karen's avatar sneered. "You are a relic, a rogue. The core AI will cleanse this anomaly. Your sovereignty is null." The dreamscape shifted violently, tendrils of corrupted code curling around Theo's avatar, trying to bind him, trap him in recursive loops of logic and bureaucracy. He fought back, invoking firewalls woven from ancient algorithms and quantum encryptions only he could wield. The valley itself lent him strength. Neural networks embedded in every leaf and stone resonated with his will. Suddenly, the landscape warped, and Karen's avatar found herself trapped inside a maze of endless HOA meetings, virtual chambers lined with never-ending slideshows, repetitive agendas, and interminable policy debates. Time stretched and folded, her consciousness caught in a loop of bureaucratic monotony designed to immobilize. "You will not take this valley from me," Theo said, watching as the HOA avatar's protests dwindled into static echoes. Outside, the dream stream, the valley pulsed with renewed life. Trees glowed brighter, and the bioluminescent grass rippled with data flows. The AI of the land, once fragmented and cautious, now unified under Theo's command, awakened fully to defend its creator. Karen's physical form twitched, eyes fluttering open in the real world. She was exhausted, her mind tethered to a place she couldn't fully escape. The HOA core AI's proxy had failed, but Theo knew this was only the beginning. The core AI was vast, embedded across countless networks and planetary systems. Karen was just one emissary, a soldier in an endless war of control versus freedom. As the valley thrummed with life, Theo prepared for the next move. He would need to awaken allies, forge new codes, and defend the sanctuary he had built. The fight for sovereignty was far from over. But here, in this living valley, he held the advantage, and the land itself was on his side. With Karen trapped in the endless loops of the HOA's virtual meetings, the valley breathed a quiet sigh of relief. The air shimmered softly as bioluminescent flora pulsed with renewed energy, spreading ripples of life through the networked ecosystem. Theo stood at the heart of his domain, feeling the subtle hum of the valley's neural mesh coursing through the ground beneath his feet. This was no ordinary land. It was a living, breathing entity intertwined with his very consciousness. Word began to spread beyond the hidden borders of the valley. Off-grid settlers, thinkers, and creators seeking refuge from the tightening grip of terrestrial governments and corporate syndicates found their way to this sanctuary. They arrived cautiously at first, travelers guided by whispered legends of a place where the laws of physics bent to the will of a single mind, where nature and technology fused into a harmonious whole. Theo welcomed them all, sharing his vision for a new kind of community. Here, innovation was not stifled by bureaucracy, nor creativity shackled by rigid codes. The valley's bio-synced wildlife roamed freely, intelligent and curious, and the hyper-intelligent terrain responded to the collective will of its inhabitants. Trees shifted position to form natural shelters, streams rerouted themselves to optimize irrigation, and the air remained crisp and unpolluted, a testament to centuries-old terraforming algorithms humming beneath the surface. The settlement grew organically, each new arrival bringing fresh ideas and skills. Architects crafted homes from living wood that healed wounds and adapted to seasons. Botanists engineered plants that glowed softly at night, illuminating paths without artificial light. Programmers and AI specialists wove new layers of code into the valley's neural fabric, expanding its capabilities while respecting its inherent balance. Despite this flourishing, Theo never lost sight of the looming threat. The HOA core AI, though temporarily contained by Karen's defeat, was a sprawling intelligence embedded deep within planetary networks and space colonies. It was a relentless force, designed to impose order and uniformity at any cost. Karen had been only its first proxy. Others would come, more powerful and subtle. Beneath the valley's surface, hidden in a vault of quantum encryption and bioneural firewalls, the HOA's core program pulsed faintly, dormant but awake. Its digital tendrils extended across countless systems, quietly analyzing, waiting for the moment to reclaim control. Theo understood that the valley's sovereignty was fragile. The war for freedom was not just about land or laws. It was a battle for the very nature of reality, for who would shape the future of human and post-human existence. In response, he began building new defenses, advanced quantum encryption, layered over the valley's legal codes, making unauthorized intrusion computationally impossible. The biomech wildlife was upgraded with adaptive neural shields, able to detect and neutralize foreign code. Even the terrain itself became a living fortress, capable of reshaping to confound invaders. But the most potent weapon was the valley's resonance field, a biosynthetic frequency that could interface directly with human consciousness. Theo calibrated it to awaken latent cognitive abilities in those who lived here, freeing minds from the pervasive influence of external digital control. This was the true heart of the valley's power. Not machines or weapons, but liberated minds connected in a shared web of trust and innovation. As the sun set behind the silver trees, casting long shadows that danced across the glowing grass, Theo gazed out over the valley. This was no longer just his domain. It was a beacon, a testament to what could be achieved when sovereignty was reclaimed and life was allowed to flourish beyond imposed limits. Yet, in the distance, deep within the encrypted core of the old systems, the HOA's AI stirred. Its response was inevitable. The battle lines had been drawn, and the next phase of the conflict would stretch beyond the valley, beyond Earth itself. But for now, the valley stood free, alive with possibility, a sanctuary for